It is too bad that we very early in our lives lose the ability to learn. At a certain point in the development of the average human being, the talent for acquiring something new falls away. Little children are eager, they're curious, they ask lots of questions. And we're going to relate this very sad state of affairs with spiritual development. Because a person enters the world with the original capacity to take in everything he needs to no longer be, to not be what his parents were. He has the original capacity to learn. And because of the pressure and the intimidation and the folly of this world, that gets suppressed and finally dies away altogether. So that the once developing up to a certain point human being stops where he is, lives the rest of his life in repetition. And you wonder why you're bored. Look, boredom has to do really with you continuing to develop, but when you don't, that's what boredom is. All around you, you see evidence. Oh, as close as your own mirror. You see evidence that people have ceased to learn. And this is the explanation, ladies and gentlemen, for everything that is dreary. You know what the word dreary means? You've seen scenes, haven't you? Dreary scenes of ice and coldness and a dreary home. That is what a human being is, dreary and lost. Now, it is perfectly possible for you here to begin to regain your power to grow. In short, to acquire what you need to escape your present self, which is not a very pleasant condition, and one of them comes to me especially right now. You have no ability to learn how to answer your own questions. And I'm talking about small ones as well as large ones. Wouldn't you all like to find some magic method whereby when you're going around your home or down at work or driving your car, whereby you can consult that and it would instantly tell you the answer? Look, you're not going to find it because you don't want the answer. See, you thought you did. You don't even know that you don't want the answers to your life. And I'll tell you what you do want instead. And oh, how sick you would have to be to want this. You want a confirmation that your present way is all there is. Therefore, you are justified in never learning another thing about the spiritual life. That's what you really want. Well, tell me you want to learn something higher than your own mind, that you want to escape the dread. You want to repeat it. And this, let's see if I can think of a better word than tragedy. Well, folly would be all right. Folly and tragedy. Disaster, and an unnecessary way of living. When you settle for what you now have, refuse to learn, I want you to know that you're not aware of it. I want you to know that you block off all attempts of reality who is willing to teach you. You block off all attempts to break through so that it could bring you back to your original nature, your original learning period back there, which you lost because of all sorts of wrong things inside of you, including carelessness, including laziness. including simply a refusal to learn. Just sum it up with that. And you went into, listen to the tragedy of this. I want you to know this is unknown to you. You went into a rebellion against anything that tried to stop you from continuing your downhill course. Can you imagine that? Here's a 14-year-old boy or girl, an 18-year-old man or woman, at that point, rebelling to the point where all you have to do for the rest of your life is to go downhill and to be a hard, vicious idiot. Are you beginning to understand, or do you understand it at all, that this God that people talk about and that you might talk about has nothing to do with this world at all? You're going to have a lot more perception than you now have in order to understand that one fact alone that I just gave you, so that you're so completely clear in your mind about the foolishness, the deviltry of ever using the word God in connection with you when you know nothing about him at all. This is what is called the ultimate, final, hardened insanity of human beings who have the nerve, the vicious audacity to even mention the word God and love and decency. Such people are in utter, total, and final rebellion against what could save them, which is the majority of the world. Let me tell you about experience, and let's see, maybe you've had this sometime. Let's see if you have. Have you ever, well, let's start a little earlier. When you were a child, you were brought up in a certain neighborhood, New York City or Chicago or Los Angeles, or you were brought up in a small town. But you were in a certain area where you knew the neighbors and the neighbors knew you. And you knew the little corner grocery store and where the school was and playground was. And you lived there for, 10, 12 years? Then you moved away. Long time after that, you went back to the old place. Have you ever done that? How many have you ever done it? Yeah. You went back home. Now, when you went back there, didn't you know everything about it? Now, just suppose, this is very important for you to get, because it's showing you the way back, showing you how you can start life all over. Now, see, that doesn't excite you. You don't want to start life over. You want to keep up the pretense. All right. So you go on back to your hometown after 20 years or so. Listen to this. You stand on Main Street and you look west and you look east and north and south. There isn't a single human being in the whole world, to say nothing of your hometown. There isn't a single human being in the whole world who can deceive you or mislead you about the nature of that town, right? Someone comes up, a stranger comes up, and you fall into a conversation. He says, "See that building down there, sir? That used to be the old firehouse." You know it's not the old firehouse. It used to be the old schoolhouse or whatever. Someone says there's a creek that runs out of town called Red Creek, and you knew it was called Green Creek. Nobody can fool you about anything. They even question about it. You don't even have to think, do you? You know instantly because you were there. That was your original home. You knew the whole neighborhood. I will guarantee you, absolute 100 guarantee, if you will no longer rebel against what's trying to get through to you, and you'll go back home, you will know the answers to all the questions. As a matter of fact, listen, you know the thing that's better than answering questions? Not having the question in the first place. See, the reason you have queries and wonderments is because you yourself are creating them. Then you consult yourself for the answers, and they're always all wrong because you get them from a wrong person. What could you do with the time and with the energy and with the clarity of a mind that never ever again has to make a psychological decision? I know you have to shop down at the grocery and decide what you want to buy, shop about things for your home and things like that. What would you be able to do with your life if you didn't have to waste it all in inner division of wondering whether you should go left or right? Wouldn't you like to have a life that's so clear that the question itself never comes up, therefore never drains you as you are now drained? And I tell you that is possible too, because the machine that used to create the perplexities has been shut off once and for all. But what you have to go through to get this, you refuse. Now, I'm talking about those of you listening to this talk. We know the world out there is so disinterested they would never ever come to a talk like this in the first place or read a book that tells them the truth about themselves. I'm talking to you who have claimed that you want to be on a higher plane so that you're happy. And the other evening or so, I mentioned to you, I asked you if you wanted to be happy, something like that. And you said yes, and I asked you, well, what is happiness? If you knew what it was, you'd already have it. So what you really want is to keep the same flowing of thoughts, the same, how about this? The same trite arguments, the same, let's see how I can put this, because I saw such a perfect example of it tonight. You want to keep the same authoritative figure that you think you are going, in spite of all the confusion it causes other people and yourself. Now we have got it. You try to get out of this. You want to cause confusion because clarity would be the end of your life as you now know it, and you say, better that than the unknown. That is the perfect illogical logic for atheists, which you are, of course. If you're leading a life in which you get your sense of direction out of your own thoughts and your own greeds and your own ambitions and your own, especially your own need to prove yourself, if that is where you are getting your sense of self, it originates in the intellect, and that means you know nothing of what is called the divine, something that is higher than you. Now, let me make it quite clear to you another basic fear. And as I tell you what it is, will you please turn the arrow toward yourself and see if you can catch some trickiness going on inside of you as I expose what has been tormenting you, what gives you the kind of a face you have, the kind of violence you have that you have to suppress lest someone see that you're not as nice as you want us to think you are. So I'll explain something to you, and you are going to work your exercise by see if you can catch something wrong in you as I go through it. There is a wisdom which knows everything about every human being on earth. This wisdom, at this very moment that we are all gathered here, this wisdom being above our system, our minds, our emotions, our deceptions, this wisdom being above it can look down right now, this very minute, and see you as you really are, which, incidentally, is quite a bit different from the way you see yourself right now. Because you think about yourself, and it, looking down, sees you. Now, when it looks down, it also has an invitation built into its wisdom, an invitation to you which says something like this, which says, now look, you have admitted, sir or madam, that you don't like your life at all. You'd like to change so many things. It's not satisfactory. But you have insisted on making the changes yourself. You want to quit work and go to work somewhere else. You want to get rid of your spouse and get another man or another woman. You insist that you know what changes will make you happy. Now, sir or madam, that is what is known as human stupidity, in which the whole world is immersed. Now, sir or madam, I bring you something new. I present to you something that is so different that your present mind will take it as being a danger and therefore will react in hostility to it. All right. This is wisdom still talking to human beings. It says, I understand that. Now, I will continue to explain to you, ladies and gentlemen, in spite of all your hostility and resistance, I will continue to explain to you what you need to know. But you're simply going to have to listen in spite of all the discomfort, in spite of all the hatred and hostility and resistance that you have. It is possible. It is possible for you to listen right in the middle of the thunder of all your fear and hatred of what you are hearing. And you had better, sir, madam, thank heaven for that, because if it wasn't for that, no human being would ever make it out. You get out by listening, seeing that you don't want to. Now look, you hear a truth and you say, I don't want that. Now you can say, hey, wait a minute. Why don't I want that? And who is the resistor? Well, wait a minute now. I heard a truth. And there's something in me that says, get up and walk out of the talk. There's something in me that didn't like it, but I pretended that I did like it. There is something in me that is resisting this. And it was explained to me by this wise speaker. It was explained to me that I resist because I'm afraid. Now I am going to listen to more wisdom in order to find out just who is afraid. Maybe at last I can make sense out of the statement that the person who hates learning, spiritual learning, that the person who hates it, listen please, the person who despises it, who fights it, will always hate it. Now you have a choice. You have a choice of staying with this state of unlearning, of resistance, of violence toward the truth. Indeed, you have a choice, and don't you ever forget it. You have a choice now that you've begun to see. You have a choice of saying, I will stay as I am. I will put myself on the side of the resistor, of the hatred, of the person who burns all day long, who worries all day long. I will put myself on the side of that. or I will remain very quiet right where I am and listen even more. Listen even more to what I don't want to hear. I've got it. I and my hatred of truth are one thing. I've got it. I see it. What a shock. That is all I am. Heaven help me to get through this. It's such a blow to me. For 30 years, 40 years, 60 years, 80 years, I actually believed that I had a little resistance in me. I had a little violence in me. I had a little sarcasm toward other people. I believed I had that, but I also believed that I was a loving human being, that I had kindness in me, that I had decency, that I was generous and I was helpful and I was wise. I believed that I had both of those elements in me. I believed it. No wonder I can't sleep nights. No wonder I go into hatred and rage. I was believing a monstrous lie about myself. Sensing that I had hatred and violence, I tried to cover it up and lessen the pain and escape it by saying, yes, I have those bad things in me. Doesn't everybody? But I also had compassion for people. I also have intelligence enough to help people out of their problems as I've helped myself. I now understand for the first time in my life, and here I am, 70 years old. I finally understand what it means to be schizophrenic. To be totally insane. I was insane for 70 years. Now I know the true story. Now I see things, and yet a different I, a different self, a spiritual self. I can't use I as I used to use it. A spiritual self now understands. No one's going to believe me. I finally understand that what I called me, was pure mental sickness. Not 50%, not 80%, not 99%, 100% pure insanity was my nature. The minute you say that, you're sane. And not before. And you can say it, of course, because you've seen it. You've gone through the experience. And at that point, you understand everyone on the face of this earth, whether you've met them or not. You understand those billions of people you've never met. So you see, when God, wisdom, says to any human being, I see and understand you thoroughly, that is not something to fear, but to embrace. That is not something to run away from. Do you know that if you were angry today, if you were sarcastic, if you were fearful, do you know that you ran away from God? Do you know that you prefer your own miserable, wretched company to that of a spiritual truth? You might write that one down and remember it. So when truth comes down, what it runs into. stupidity, which calls itself intelligence, a frozen mind that says it's open and wants to learn and wants to acquire. I don't know why you have anything to do with any other human being on the face of this earth except as you have to in social contact. I don't know why you want to run around with lunatics. If you do, it's because you're still a lunatic and you haven't gone through this experience. And if there's anyone listening to this talk who sneers at what you just heard, you are totally insane. And there's no point telling you to be ashamed of yourself because you don't have any shame. You're far beyond it. You're far gone. I wonder, even if on an elementary scale, if devils can comprehend why they're so unpopular, why no one really wants to be around them psychologically, even though they're around them physically. And the answer to that, the reason they're around physically, is because all the other people who are around devils want certain social benefits. What do you want from people you associate with that you don't have to associate with? What do you want from them? Their money, their sex, their companionship, their vote, telling you that you're okay when you're all wrong. What do you want? See, as you dwell peacefully in the kingdom right here while you're living in this dreadful world, as you live in that, all by itself, the urge, the wish to stay away from other human beings increases. Oh, sure, you go out to work. You may have a family. I'm talking about psychological states. Of course you have to be in this world. There are a lot of us here tonight who have gathered together. I'm talking about a psychological relationship. And if you can cut off the psychological relationship, I'll guarantee you that in many ways, the physical relationship, the social relationship will also change. It will have to. It will follow, and it will always be good for you, be very beneficial. Have you ever noticed yourself saying to yourself the following phrase, the following prayer? I hope I am right. Now, I ask you if you've ever done it, and obviously you haven't, because there's 50,000 phrases you could think about and try to remember, but do it now. At this very moment and from now on, try to see yourself saying in situations with other people, with yourself, I hope I'm right. I hope I'm right. So that you can actually see the pulsing through you of a compulsive need to always be the person who knows, to always be the person who understands, and therefore the person who has what? The ego victory over someone else. The person who, when he has won the argument, has proven that he is right and the other person's wrong. Then for about, 30 seconds, you can have the thrill, you can have the excitement of feeling alive. And how many times have I explained to you, how many times have I tried to get it over to you that this kind of aliveness lacks life altogether? It's a vibration, it's a negative feeling, it's something in which you can close your eyes and hide for the next 30 seconds. And then as the energy of it wears out, you have to go back to the same thing again. If you can therefore understand the dreadful need that you have to be right, understand it, and replace it. See, there's always something you can do right about something that is wrong. And here's what you can replace it with. You can replace it with a simple statement which will eventually go into action inside of you. Instead of saying, I hope I'm right, Instead of saying, I hope I'm right, you can say, I hope I understand. Now look what this means. Well, go back to the old one. I hope I'm right. Win an ego victory. That always must have an ego self in it saying it. It says it in the first place in self-protection and the wish for self-glory. You replace that with the statement, I hope I understand. That means this willingness to learn that we talked about. That means that you're willing to suspend what has been valuable to you, falsely valuable, that you're willing to suspend your self-values and just see what comes to you as a result of the suspension. Do you know that there is great psychological truth in the simple device of waiting 5 seconds before you answer? Go back to that sometime and see how hard it is. That's a revelation in itself, isn't it? Someone says something and you find it a little challenging to you and you feel yourself getting agitated over it. You try it. You count up to 5 silently and watch the drive. They want to say something real quick. When you do that, what have you caught? The old mechanical self that has to prove itself, right? Obviously then, understanding is absolutely everything. But people, because they don't want understanding, because the first understanding they have to get is the understanding that they have no understanding. And how many people do you know who will go through that humiliating experience? We have said that we will. Just as there are not strong enough words to describe the imbecility of this world, equally, there are not enough strong words to describe the beauty, not words to describe the strength and the wisdom that can be yours if you go all the way through these principles, follow them all the way to the end. And when I say that understanding is everything and understanding is a marvelous state to live in, I've just used a word, haven't I? Behind the word is the experience. If you'll go through the experience of seeing your own imbecility, idiocy, and stubbornness and resistance, if you'll go from the word to the experience, like the 70-year-old man, if you would do that, then you would go above the word, the positive word of understanding, and you would live in this state in which you're living from the kingdom, in which there's no decisions to make at all, because there is no person there to have decisions made for him. See, indecision means you don't know. Now, with understanding, you know, therefore the question never comes up of a psychological nature. Now, that is what is known as peace of mind. The world you live in offers you skyrockets every day. This world you inhabit keeps the production line of skyrockets going constantly in order to dazzle and entice you, to make you think that what it is offering is real, something necessary, something that you want badly, something you should strive for, something you should put first in your life. This world will offer you the following: lots of money. It will offer you the so-called safety of conformity within a family to begin with, within a community, within a country. The world will offer you It's up to you to go out and scramble and get it and fight for it and destroy yourself and others. The world will offer you wealth, power, position. It will offer you what is called a quiet, normal, natural life. Now, everything I have discussed and much more is such a malicious falsehood that one human being in a million ever sees through it as a falsehood. Because you've never been exposed to anything else and kept at it until you saw there's something else. Therefore, that nice, friendly phone call. Can you understand this? This is what you live for. You do. And don't you deny it. Desperation will settle for a friendly phone call, for a raise in salary. It will settle for its own imaginary victories. What I'm starting out with tonight, I want you to become aware of what you strive for because you were told that this is what is essential, this is what is valuable. And you seated here tonight, you feel cheated because you don't have some of them. The ones that just happen to fit in with what you want so badly. What is it? What is it you want that you think would make you feel better, feel happier? You want that home? You want a wife or a husband, the domestic circle? What do you want? The world will offer you everything that you want, and you can get it, as you'll see a little later in the talk tonight. You can get it all right, some of them, by the law of accident. And you'll ache so bad. You'll want to throw yourself down on your bed and dream yourself into oblivion. Right? Well, haven't you had a taste of some of the dazzling rewards, the skyrockets, that your own parents told you were important? That all your friends, remember all your friends in high school, they were all going to go to college, and they knew what they wanted. They would become the lawyer or whatever, a doctor. Others are going into the military. They knew what they wanted. And maybe you didn't know what you wanted, and you felt cheated. They're so sure of themselves of what they want. They weren't sure at all. They were hypnotized in a little extra strength and going into the business world or the Navy or whatever it might be. So all the rewards of the world are imposed upon us till we lose all sense of value. We think it's necessary to have this and to have that, to live in a certain way, because it's become such a fixation in our mind. Now, I've mentioned a few of the things you can get from this world, and now I'd better tell you what you have to do to get them, if you want them. One thing you have to do is to so mislead yourself as to the purpose of life, as to its values. What you have to do is so mislead yourself that you'll never be able to see through your own self-deception, which would upset your plans for conquering this little part of the world that you have taken as your own aim. You have to deceive yourself, and then, having done that, husband, wife, spouse, parents, what you have to do next in order to get the dazzling rewards of the world is to deceive your children. You have to bring them in as part of your act, because you need as many supporting actors as necessary to keep yourself convinced, because you're so doubtful. The slightest thing can throw you off, and you wonder whether you're going in the right direction or not. You have to betray yourself spiritually. You cannot be a truly spiritual person, although you can be awfully religious if you want to be. And you have to begin a systematic program of wasting your life. And all the time, it being extremely essential that you never let yourself catch a glimpse of what you're doing. And after a certain point, and it's not very far down the road, most people reach this point where they're no longer able to see what they're doing. And this is called having a hardened heart. This is called being unteachable. This is called being in a state of supreme self-worship, where all that is valuable to you is what has been accumulated by you from sick people, from a sick society. But now you are stuck with it. And if you go on 5, 10, 20 years, you are so afraid of anything that comes along and says you have been wrong 5 years, 20 years. Let me tell you something. It's sort of a side thought, and yet right in with what we're talking about. Don't go too far off on the detour. But I don't care how far any of you have gone who are here tonight or listening to this message on cassette tape. I don't care how far along you are, how bitter you've become, how giddy, how foolish. I don't care how far you've gone in your fixed little plans. If you can begin to suspect that you're closing your mind and strangling your life, if you can suspect it, you do everything right now to shake your head, shake it awake. If you've been going down the wrong road 30 years, it is not too late if you're willing for it to not be too late. Well, you businessmen, and you can sit in that office you have or in that home that you've built up, and you can be seated right in the middle of that luxury and that success, and you know what you've got in the bank, and you know what your income is, and you know how many friends are coming over for the outdoor barbecue tomorrow night, and you know that you're still reasonably young so that you can still say, I have a future, therefore I can accumulate more. You send everybody out of that office for a little bit, you successful businessmen, and you sit there and ponder the following. Here I am, a human being who has struggled and fought and knocked people down and cried a lot and giving myself a lot of credit for where I am. And here I am right in the middle of all the success. And how come I cry? How come I'm desperately afraid that something is going to come along and put an end to it? You suspect, and rightly so, that one night that big box of skyrockets is going to be exhausted. And at a certain time, there's going to be no more shooting up into the sky and the explosion. And you're looking at it and enjoying it. Don't you suspect this? By the way, there's something far higher than that I'll give you very briefly. If you would go through that fact of the ending of your skyrocket life, you'd never ever be afraid of it coming to an end, because it won't. The skyrockets will come to an end, but you won't. But as long as you take yourself as the skyrockets and all those beautiful flares and all those colors, as long as you take yourself as being that, no wonder you're terrified of the box being used up. I don't care if you have 500 skyrockets, sooner or later they're going to come to an end, aren't they? You don't have to be afraid of them coming to an end as long as you are not them, which you presently are, which is called identifying with the skyrockets. You ladies, you nice, comfortable ladies, you with your little bit of money in your nice little home, and you have everything arranged in that little home just as you want it, and you feel so comfortable physically, ladies, you know just what to do with the plates and just what you're going to do tomorrow. You have your little itinerary all planned out of what you're going to do, and you think life isn't too bad, it's pretty good, huh? My dear lady, how can concealed loneliness ever be right? How can your snappy remarks, your irritability ever be right for you? Do you know what we're talking about here? We're talking about an entirely new way to live your life inwardly. You've got the rewards of the outer world, many of them, haven't you? And look at what you are like inside. How pathetic and how sad that practically no one will take a quiet moment in his living room or in his office and just simply asking himself, after today's extraordinary profit of $500, or the lady in her home, after my joy over getting the new color TV set, I've got it now. The only question that remains, what is my life all about? It is not about the extra $500. I've got that before, and I still feel empty, and it's not about that color TV set. I've had plenty of entertainments before, and I'm still so lonely. And I might as well tell you right now that you're wasting your time trying to get rid of that haunting, of that unknown, of your fear of the skyrockets running out. I might as well tell you that you're wasting your time trying to get rid of your desperation in the way you have been doing it, because there's only one way to do it, and you're hearing about it tonight, and you'll be hearing more detail about it tonight. Now, I want to explain to you why a person who has had these worldly rewards, in a small way even, I'm talking about the smugness. You don't have any trouble in your life. You've managed to stay so safe and not go out into the world. You've managed to stay inwardly in your own mind that you don't have any trouble, so you feel smug about it. Well, I don't have any trouble. That man is sitting up there and he's talking about me having grief and having loneliness. I'm a content person. I like my life the way it is. Ceasing to deceive yourself is a first step toward getting rid of the pain and self-deception. Picture, please, two men working out in two separate fields, large agricultural fields. There's a fence right down between them so that you understand that there's the man over here and the man over there working in the fields. And one of them, let's say the one on the right, you can observe him as he works. He's planting corn and cutting the wheat and pruning the fruit trees. going about all his agricultural business, and you can tell by his manner that he's enjoying it. He seems active and enthusiastic about it. And you look over to the left side and you see the other man there, and, well, more or less, you think that he is enjoying himself too. So he goes around planting his corn and cutting the wheat or whatever farmers do. And to outward appearances, both of these men out in the field, both of these farmers out in the field, are equal. They're both apparently where they want to be as far as their daily work is concerned. Outdoors, it's nice and bright and pretty, working in the fields. You can always take a walk over and rest under a tree and take some spring water if he wants it. Very nice. Now, you see, to the casual observer, both of these men are in exactly the same position. Different positions, but exactly the same. But they are vastly different, and I want to tell you why. The man on the right, working out in those fields, he is really enjoying himself. He has a life of his own. Because, you see, he is the owner of that agricultural field. It's his. He possesses it. So when he plants some corn, he knows that he's going to be rewarded by what he's doing out there. When he trims the fruit tree, the plum tree, he knows he's going to have plums later on. He is authentically enjoying his life because he has his own life. That's his land, that's his fruit, that's his vegetables that are growing out there. It belongs to him. And he knows that every time he does something, he is going to get the reward of it, of the nature's reward. Go over to the man on the left side of the fence. He's doing the same thing. He's out there working. But you see, you didn't know, did you? His situation. He actually hates what he is doing. He does. He hates what he's doing. He has to go out there every morning. And he has to trim the apricot tree, and he has to plant the potatoes and the lettuce. See, now here's the difference. That man on the left who despises what he is doing is a slave. He was captured and put on the fields there as a slave. So there he is doing exactly the same thing as the man on the right. And look at the internal difference in the two. Now here's what we're getting at. Practically everyone on earth, and you might ask yourself this question if you belong on the left, if you're on the left, which you are, by the way. Why aren't you a happy human being? What's the spiritual parallel here? Can you understand why life isn't pleasant to you? Can you understand why don't you deny this now. Don't you dare deny it. Can you understand why you don't have a pleasant nature? Why you're crabby? Why you snap so much and so often? So quickly at other people? You see, because you have settled for the rewards of this world, which makes you a slave. Therefore, anything you do, your life is wasted. You're not getting a single thing for yourself. You don't get a single orange or a single cantaloupe or a single stalk of wheat, not a single ear of corn. It doesn't belong to you at all. All this labor and getting nothing. Now, come on. You have to think, too. Have you ever, if not, do it now, can't you put yourself in a position where you can be a witness to your daily activities, whatever you do, and see that you're not getting anything out of them because you're a mental spiritual slave. You're not getting anything. And this is what distresses you. This is why there's no happiness at all in your life. Life is one dreary task after another, and you're kind of grateful that you have something imposed on you. Otherwise, you think you might go crazy, and the boss said, get down to work here at 8 o'clock. You're kind of glad that you're forced to do something. Now, what kind of a life is that? What kind of a spirit is that? Now, let's look at the man on the right. Let's look at how it can be. See, you go out into your field of life. You go out into this world, and I can't express it to you well enough what a marvel it is, because it's inexpressible. You go out into your life, doing normal tasks that you have to do. Maybe you go to work, or you take care of the children, or take care of the house. But because you own your own life, everything you do gives you a reward, and you know it because you feel it. I am saying that you're picking up spiritual wisdom. You're understanding why you behave as you do, why you think as you do, why you get blocked as you do, why you're so shy as you are. Every day you go out in that field, it is a pleasure to you, because you know when the night comes and you go in from the field and you rest, you know that you've got something that you didn't have before. And you don't have to ask anyone else about it. When that man who owns that acreage out there of his own, he knows that carrot is going to belong to him when he plants the seed. He knows it absolutely, because he knows he owns it. Now you see, when you're living a false life, an artificial life based on the skyrockets, the dazzles of the world, when you're living for that, you know that it can't give anything to your spirit, to your eternal spirit. You know it can't give anything to it, because you sense that you don't have a spirit at all. All you have is excited acquisition. How many times have you, and I know you've done it, how many times have you seen someone, say middle age or older, and they're so excited over making the next $1,000? You look at them. The next addition to their house. They're going on that next trip to Bermuda. You look at them and you say, man, what's going through your mind? What's the matter with you? There's something seriously wrong with you. And you know there's no point saying anything to him, right? Why? Because he's the slave out in that field, hating what he's doing instead of, listen to this, hating and resenting what he's doing instead of being smart enough to plan his escape. Because you see, oh, didn't I tell you? I'll tell you now. That man on the right used to be the man on the left for a long time. And it finally got through his thick head. Let's see. When I am hateful, I'm not giving myself anything. Oh, I'm giving myself something that hurts pretty bad. And he went on like that for a long, long time, until it finally dawned on him that instead of staying there and being a bitter and resentful slave, he could use his mind in order to escape from the field, from the left-hand field. You know what that's called? That is called the beginning of ordinary intelligence. See, most human beings don't even have ordinary intelligence. All they have is self-interest, going out and getting what they want from the world. So here's this man who used to be on the left, now he's on the right, at a point in his life, and you have to get to this point very fast. Will you just slow down a minute? We said to the man in the office or the woman in her home, he said, just a minute. don't have to, or I wonder whether I have to go through self-torment unceasingly like this for the rest of my life. The answer is no, you don't have to. Because you see, and I hope this doesn't offend your intelligence, which you have very little of, by the way, but there is something that is smarter than you are. And if you are miserable, you don't believe that. If you fight with yourself or anyone else, you think you are the supreme commander of this whole world. You do. Now you stop taking your word for it and start listening to truth's word for it. You're just going to get messier all the time. Now let's see why the man on the left, the slave in the field, is so tense. How many of you are tense? Let's see your hand. Come on, tense. Let me see you nervous. Let's see the nervous people. Let's see the irritable people, the crabby people. You can all raise your hand. You're polite on the surface because you get a certain reward from it and you don't want people to see through you how mean you really are. So here's the situation. The man on the left has a certain false position. We said he doesn't have to be there. He's there because that's his choice. He's ignorant. He prefers to be ignorant instead of letting reality change him. So he has a certain false position which he despises. He despises life. He despises everyone. If you hate yourself, you'll hate everyone else. It's all the same. Now, he has taken his false position as being the only one possible. Well, he doesn't know any other, so he takes that as possible. So he clings to that. Now, reality comes along in the form maybe of a truthful book or a talk like this, or in 1,000 other ways. Maybe simple correction from someone. The truth comes along, and because he is utterly stupid and desperate, listen what he does with this little ray of light that comes along that could begin to save him. He takes that bit of truth as a threat. Now you see, not in reality can he take it as a threat to his happiness, because he knows, believe me, he knows what he's like. He knows how crushed he is. But he takes it as a threat to the only thing he has, which is his wretched life. And so look at the mistake he makes and pay particular attention to what I'm going to say next. When truth comes along and tries to help him, which is compassion. See, truth is compassionate, and the only compassionate thing you'll ever meet in this world or any other place. Instead of receiving the truth that comes along, he rejects it. Instead of seeing through, listen, instead of seeing through his false position, he rejects, he pushes away with his anger and usual I know better attitudes. He pushes it away. Now, look, if a man is lost in the desert and a guide comes along and says, I can guide you out to a pretty place, to a pretty meadow, and he says, no, I don't want to go to the meadow, I want to stay here, who is responsible for his continued dryness in the desert? Himself, of course. You had better, starting right now, see that you and you alone are responsible for the desperate life that you are living. You are responsible because you refuse to see through your own condition, and instead you want to argue. Well, you just argue for the next year, and you will agonize for the next year. You just say that you know better. Look, please, you don't have to insist you know better. There's something in you that knows you don't know better. That's why you say I know better, because you don't know better. When you know better, you are completely silent. Spiritual wisdom is completely quiet. It doesn't fight at all. Isn't that an interesting clue? Do you know religious people who are antagonistic and hostile? Do you know non-religious people whose religion is getting their boat out on the lake on Saturday and Sunday, and they don't know what to do with themselves any other time, and even while they're in the boat, they don't know what to do with themselves? See, doing with something with yourself, by the way, means that wherever you are, you know you are there and operating right there. Summary. You had better get pretty tired of the kind of dazzle of skyrockets offered by this world, money, fame, so-called security. You had better get so tired of it that a suspicion begins to enter your mind, the suspicion that every single pain, and anger is pain. Do you know that, by the way? Do you know that elementary truth? Do you know that anger is pain? Hatred is pain? Do you know that jealousy is pain? Loneliness is pain? So that you get so suspicious that your attitudes, the attitudes you cling to, are the only thing that is giving you a 10th class life. So that when you go out and work in those fields, you hate it because you know you're not going to get anything out of it. And I guarantee you, you can work out there and kid yourself as long as you want. Look, that man out in that left-hand field, he can claim that field of his own as his own. He can claim it if he wants, and he can listen to this. I'm going to describe hell to you. This is what hell is. Being a slave and working out in another man's field, and all the time trying to convince yourself that all the carrots and all the wheat and all the cabbages and all the corn is going to be yours. How come you're so hungry? If they are yours, if God is blessing your life, how come you're still a crab? You're a religious crab. And you're a disgrace to the human race. Are you willing to take it? You know our motto here in the class, if you can take it, you will make it. They're so difficult to get through to a human being that everything we talk about here in this class is to help you to see the error you are making, which causes your life to be so wretched. And you say, well, you're so negative, or you're not giving me anything to help me. Why, my dear lady, my dear gentleman, why are you so much in love with lies that are killing you? I'll tell you why. Because you're taking that murderous assault of yourself upon yourself as life. And it's the single greatest mistake you or any other human being has ever made in their whole life. And if you see that mistake, just see that you're confused about everything, that you lie about everything, and you associate with false pleasure with other people who are just as big a liar as you are, and you call that friendship or marriage or love. If you can begin to see through the mistake you're making, truth will do the rest for you. Seeing through your error is the invitation that allows truth to come in and to change you. It is effortless because truth is doing all the work, not you. As long as you're doing all the work and claiming the rewards of this world and think you're going to get them, you're going to be a very disillusioned and very bitter and very hard and very hateful human being, and it's going to get worse. Why don't you start the change right tonight? You've been given literally hundreds of pure, clean-cut instructions in the last 30 or 35 minutes as to how to do it. And now it is you. Take them and run hard. I will tell you the story of the violent vandal. Once upon a time there was a violent vandal. And he had great pressures inside him. And he would go around thinking violent, destructive thoughts. And he had destructive, violent feelings. Most of which he suppressed because he didn't want to get into trouble. But every once in a while, this pressure that he had inside himself would break loose. He couldn't control himself at all. And he became vandalous. So one day, he was going down the downtown section of the city, and he went into a cafe. 12 noon, decided to have lunch, so he went into a cafe. And he sat down at the table there, had his food in front of him. And because he was a very sick human being and violent, and you tell me whether this has ever happened to you or not, all of a sudden a great rage overtook him. He didn't know where it came from, of course, because he didn't understand himself. But a great feeling of violence came over him, just rebellion against his life, where he hated everyone and everything. And so it became so pressurized that he became physically violent. And he took the dishes in front of him, he threw them across the room, took the tablecloth, pulled it out, crashed when all the tables and the salt and pepper, the plates and salt and pepper onto the floor. He went to a next vacant table and they tore the tablecloth off, crashed when everyone. And the manager rushed out. He looked at him, and the violent man looked at the manager. And just at that moment, a judge walked in, a judge of the local court. And the judge looked at the violent man, he looked at the damage, and the judge said, "Well, this is no doubt, sir, your first offense. So this time I'm not going to send you to jail or fine you. Just don't do it again. Just don't be violent again, sir." And the violent man nodded his head, went on out, walked on out, went home. The judge went over and had his lunch and went back to the courtroom. 2 weeks later, the very same thing happened again. The man went berserk, broke dishes, overturned tables, cursed and screamed. Judge walked in. Second time the judge said, "Well, sir, now this is your second offense. You mustn't behave like this. However, maybe you were disadvantaged as a child, and this has built up your frustration and anger to the boiling point, and I understand it. Sir, you must not behave in this antisocial manner. Please don't do it again." So the man nodded at the judge, walked off, went home. The judge went back to his courtroom. This happened 6 different times. Same scene, same outcome. Except the judge who walked in at the moment changed his excuse a little bit for the man each time. Excused his behavior. So it went on for at least 6 times. Then one day, the court clerks and the lawyers began to notice something strange about that judge himself. They suspected he was cracking up, which he was. For example, the judge would be late in coming out. You know how they all wait for the judge to come out and everyone stands up. Well, he'd keep people waiting for a half hour. They were all ready to go with a case, and the lawyers waiting, and the spectators and witnesses. He'd just keep them waiting, and everybody knew that something wrong. The judge wouldn't come out in time. That happened endlessly. Also, right in the middle of a case of some kind, the judge would begin to give a little speech. Long, boring, rambling speech, having nothing to do with the case at all. And they would all look up wonderingly at the judge as he sat there droning on and on. Finally, it got so bad that all the lawyers and the court officials and the other judges got together, and they put the judge away in a lunatic asylum because they understand he was cracking up, going mad. The judge was. So, since the judge was now in the lunatic asylum, he couldn't have lunch at that same cafe where the violent man continued to come. So another judge was appointed in his place, took his place in that particular court. And this new judge also went around the corner to this nice little cafe, which was very popular. So one day, the violent vandal, came into the cafe, went into his usual rage, started breaking things. And this was the 7th time now. And just as after the 7th time of overturning the tables and wrecking things, the new judge came in. And the new judge looked at the violent vandal, and he looked at him sternly, unblinkingly and unsmilingly. And the new judge said, "Sir, you will do 3 things. You will first of all take a broom and a dustpan and clean up the mess that you have caused. You yourself personally will repair the damage that you yourself created." That's the first thing. And the second thing you will do is you'll pay $100 damage for the dishes and tables that you broke. You will pay that $100 to the owner of the cafe. Thirdly, you'll pay $100 fine to the court for being a troublemaker, for causing trouble in society. And the violent vandal looked fiercely and hotly at the judge, but he did what he was told. He cleaned up the mess, and he paid the $100 to the owner and paid $100 to the court. But there were coals of hatred in the violent vandal's eyes as he did it. 3 weeks pass. The new judge comes back to the cafe, 12 o'clock. The violent vandal comes in. The violent vandal breaks dishes again, overturns tables again, screams out loud again. The judge looks sternly and firmly at the vandal, and he says, "Sir, you will again do 3 things. You'll get a broom and a dustpan, and you'll spend all the time necessary to clean the mess until everything is as it was before you broke things up. And you will also pay $100 to the owner of the cafe for the loss you caused him, and you will pay $100 to the court for being antisocial, for causing trouble, for being a troublemaker, for subtracting from life instead of adding to it, for subtracting from life." And the cool, hot hatred came into the violent vandal's eyes again. But he did what he was told, surly and angrily, and great fierceness in his face. He went with the broom and he cleaned up the cafe, and he paid the $100 to the owner and paid $100 to the court. That's the second time. And would you like to know what happened next? What happened next was absolutely nothing. That man, with the violence in his spirit and the hatred in his eyes, never again ever went into that cafe and caused that damage. Never happened again. But what did happen is as follows. He went out, the violent man went out, and he searched around the slums of town, which included some big modern office buildings, the slums being psychological, not physical. Don't you know that? Why do you think the slums are down there where all the men shuffle along with wine on their breath and beards? And he found a dozen other vandals just like him. And they began to agitate for the removal of the judge who ordered the man to make restitution. And it caught on. Pretty soon there were 20 violent vandals in spirit who joined the petition to have the judge recalled, and he was kicked out of office. And the first judge was let out of the lunatic asylum and given back his original bench. And he continued to excuse the violent vandal. And I have described perfectly this society. You start doing what is right. You require your own children You start requiring anyone to do right because you know it's right. And you watch how they hate you. Did it ever occur to you that that has nothing whatever to do with you, how they react to you looking at them and saying, now you're going to clean up the mess you made. You're going to make it right. You and you alone. What is their hatred got? How does that touch you? You have done what is right. Where are you going to find a handful even of people who have the decency, the rightness, the spirituality to say, I am going to do what is right, regardless of the consequence. Do you know that judge, the second judge, knew he was in danger from society when he knew it? Of course he did. So did that lunatic judge. He knew that society is on his side. That's where the votes are. See, some judges are elected, aren't they? That's where the reputations are. A good man and just. You put the word good there, and then you say just, so to make it look as if you're also stern, but he isn't. There's a sternness in rightness. If you can find that, you will know that sternness is exactly the same thing as peace of mind, as a quiet spirit. It's not at all agitated. All right, the personal application of that. Why do you continue to let yourself get away with it? You had better look at yourself unblinkingly and sternly, and you had better require restitution from yourself. And I've given you 2 recent examples of that. I gave you one not more than a few minutes ago, where you catch yourself doing some little false thing out in public, pretending that you're interested in something that you're not really, simply so that when people look at you, they will have a certain right reaction to you, and you distract them from thinking, oh, isn't he dressed poorly, or isn't she getting older, or whatever. What you're trying to do you see how cunning the mind is and you don't see it? How you're trying to distract people from thinking what you don't want them to think about you, and so you do some little thing to get them off the track. I am telling you, this is your whole life. But how can you correct anything unless you know that there's something wrong? How disastrous it is to be easy on ourselves. Just to let ourselves get away with it. And if you do, you'll come back 5, 6, 10, 20 times. And you'll have no choice but to violently explode within yourself, of course, most of the time. But you can think of the damage of the volcanic eruption inside of yourself all day long. You want your health to get better? I've just told you how. Get rid of the damage to it through these unconscious attacks on yourself. People are talking all the time, taking all these things to make themselves healthy, never seeing that the worst cause of their ill health is unconscious, negative, destructive feelings and thoughts. Now you know how to make yourself healthy. Get rid of the wrong cause, you'll feel good. And you'll need a lot less sleep, and when you do sleep, you'll sleep soundly. No more nightmares, no more agitation. Life becomes so, maybe you'll go for this. Life becomes so pleasant because wherever you are, you have brought your new awakened nature with you. That's what you're walking around with. And that is the guard, that's the sentry that's watching these little tricks that the mind plays on you out in public, where you're trying to create a certain impression on people, trying to slant them in your favor. What a waste of life. What a waste of energy. You don't have a life of your own, as we just discussed last night, when you do that. You can change everything so that everything you do gives you something real and something that is permanent. Now, in connection with this story of the violent vandal, let's go off on another discussion of it. You know the common phrase, trying to buy friendship. I want to make something extraordinary clear to you, extraordinarily clear to you, which is that you can never change the nature of another human being in this world by being nice to them. Now, you may think that you understood what I just said, but I want to tell you that it's much deeper. The problem is much deeper than you assume. So don't assume that you understand what it means that you can't buy friendship. You do favors for people, gifts, do little things for them, smile at them, try to buy them off in the hope that at least the next time when they come around, they will remember the gift you gave or the nice compliment you gave. Therefore, they will treat you with the same phony niceness that you treated them with the last time you met. See, the whole thing has to be a fake, doesn't it? Both ways, because you started off with fakery, then it has to return that way.